It's another day in the White House. South Korea's president's visit carried echoes of the attention drawn when Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky addressed the White House earlier in Trump's tenure. Both visits spotlighted leaders under existential threat. Ukraine battling Russian aggression, South Korea managing a nuclear-armed neighbor. Yet, the optics diverged. Zelensky's visit centered on wartime urgency and military aid, while Lee combined strategic diplomacy with a $150 billion investment pledge, offering President Trump both economic headlines and a renewed chance to position himself as a deal maker on the Korean peninsula. President Trump has constantly positioned himself as the world's peacemaker. Here's another moment for him. What will the outcome be? What will be the outcome of this meeting? Details will come shortly after the break. This and many more will be explored in today's Flash News. Good afternoon and welcome. I am Tabitha Arko. Let's begin. United States President Donald Trump expressed readiness to meet North Korean leader Kim Jong-un during talks with South Korean President Lee Jae-myung at the White House on Monday, as both leaders discussed peace efforts on the Korean peninsula and Pyongyang's nuclear ambitions. Let's take a listen.
I have a great relationship with Kim Jong-un. I hope it stays that way. I think it will. I have a very good relationship. I understand him. I spent a lot of free time with him talking about things that we probably aren't supposed to talk about. And, I get along with him really well. Well, I'm meeting a lot of people. I mean, it's hard to say that, but I'd like to meet him this year.
South Korean president, who took office in June, urged Trump to take a leading role in advancing inter-Korean peace. The meeting came at a time of heightened regional tensions, and as Seoul's trade and defense ties with Washington face scrutiny under Trump's America First policies. Accompanied by senior executives, Lee announced that South Korean businesses will invest $150 billion in the United States. Major deals included Korean Air's $50 billion purchase of Boeing aircraft and Hyundai Motor Group's pledge to expand its United States investments from $21 billion to $26 billion. Let's take a listen.
Mr. President, let me begin by thanking you on behalf of the Korean people. I would like to thank you for giving your time for today's meeting. And I heard that you recently redecorated the Oval Office, and I would just like to say that it looks very bright and beautiful, and it has the dignity of America, and it symbolizes the new future and prosperity of America. I believe that making America great again is your goal, and I believe that that is what is currently taking place in America. And I think the most symbolic thing of that is the Dow Jones Index, which reached a record high recently, although it went down a bit, but it reached a record high. And so I think that America is becoming great again. So I believe that there is a renaissance taking place, not only in the shipbuilding sector, but also in the manufacturing industry. And I hope that Korea can be a part of that renaissance. And one thing that I wanted to say to you is that America's role not as a keeper of peace, but a maker of peace is being more is emerging more evidently.
Europe.
Many wars in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, and in the Middle East are coming to peace because of the role that you are playing.
At the Oval Office, alongside diplomacy, both leaders exchanged symbolic gifts. Lee presented President Trump with cowboy hat, an engraved Gulf porter, and a model of a Korean turtle ship, underscoring efforts to strengthen personal rapport. President Trump, who previously held 3 unprecedented meetings with Kim between 2018 and 2019, said he was open to renewed dialogue. Those earlier talks, however, ended without a breakthrough on denuclearization. The possibility of fresh negotiations comes amid rising tensions. North Korea recently launched air defense missiles, expanded its nuclear production capacity, and deepened military ties with Russia. South Korea, on the other hand, has warned that Pyongyang's nuclear arsenal has more than doubled in recent years and is now capable of producing up to 20 weapons annually. Now, that's why the signals from Washington and Seoul, prospects for a Trump-Kim meeting remain uncertain. Pyongyang has denounced recent United States-South Korea joint military drills and continues to resist calls for denuclearization while advancing missile development, including work on intercontinental and hypersonic systems. We see that the White House meeting marks Lee's first major diplomatic test since taking office following the impeachment of his predecessor. For Trump, it revives a central theme of his first term: personal diplomacy with Kim Jong-un, a strategy that produced high-profile summits but no lasting peace agreement. That's right there, body coming this to definitely justify what will be the outcome of this meeting. Now over into Australia. Australia on Tuesday accused Iran of orchestrating 2 anti-Semitic arson attacks in Sydney and Melbourne, and ordered Tehran's ambassador to leave within 7 days, marking the country's first expulsion of an envoy since World War II. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said the Australian Security Intelligence Organization had credible evidence linking Iran to the incident, describing them as acts intended to sow discord and undermine social cohesion. Let's take a listen.
Since the terrible events of October 7, 2023, we have witnessed a number of appalling anti-Semitic attacks against Australia's Jewish community. I've made it clear that these sorts of incidents have no place in Australia and that I wanted ASIO and the AFP to investigate as a priority. ASIO has now gathered enough credible intelligence to reach a deeply disturbing conclusion that the Iranian government directed at least 2 of these attacks. Iran has sought to disguise its involvement, but ASIO assesses it was behind the attacks on the Lewis Continental Kitchen in Sydney on October 20 last year and the Adass Israel Synagogue in Melbourne on December 6 last year. ASIO assesses it is likely Iran directed further attacks as well. These were extraordinary and dangerous acts of aggression orchestrated by a foreign nation on Australian soil. They were attempts to undermine social cohesion and sow discord in our community. It is totally unacceptable, and the Australian government is taking strong and decisive action in response. A short time ago, we informed the Iranian ambassador to Australia that he would be expelled. We have suspended operations at our embassy in Tehran, and all our diplomats are now safe in a third country. I can also announce the government will legislate to list Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, as a terrorist organisation. I've said many times that the Australian people want 2 things. They want killing in the Middle East to stop, and they don't want conflict in the Middle East brought here. Iran has sought to do just that. They have sought to harm and terrify Jewish Australians and to sow hatred and division in our community.
In his statement, operations has been suspended, but then we see that the attacks targeted a kosher restaurant in Sydney and the Adass Israel Synagogue in Melbourne in 2024. Both sites were set ablaze, but no injuries were reported. 2 men have since been charged over the synagogue fire, while police continue investigations into possible links to organized crime. Albanese announced that Australia would suspend operation as its Tehran embassy and move to designates Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organization. Foreign Minister Penny Wong confirmed that Ambassador Ahmad Sadiqi and 3 Iranian officials must depart the country. Australia's intelligence chief, Mike Boggess, said the Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps had been directed individuals, including members of organized crime groups, to carry out operations on its behalf. Asia's embassy, in return, in Canberra welcomed the move, calling Iran a threat not only to Jews and Israel, but to global security. The explosions come against a backdrop of heightened diplomatic tensions. Just days earlier, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu openly criticized Albanese, accusing him of abandoning the Jewish community after Australia formally recognized a Palestinian state. Prime Minister Netanyahu has made a statement. Let's take a listen in an interview with Sky News.
People congratulate the Prime Minister of Australia, you know something is wrong. And in fact, it is wrong, because to offer them a state, when they had a state, a de facto state in Gaza, and they use it for murder, pillage, and monstrous crimes, is to reward terrorism. And I think that's a sign of weakness that, as I said, will tarnish the Prime Minister's record, and I said so openly. I think a lot of Western leaders are showing this weakness, or what Churchill called the slumber of democracies. He said democracies sleep, they go to sleep, and they wake up only when they hear the jarring gong of danger. Well, we hear more than a jarring gong. We hear alarm bells all over the place, where you have these fanatics, these Islamist fanatics who not only target Israel, want to murder Arabs who don't share their nefarious creed. They want to destroy the West. They say so openly. And these people, when they demonstrate in Sydney or in Melbourne or in New York or Washington or in the capitals of Europe, they should be counteracted. They should be opposed, and they should be defied by the leaders. And yet we see, not in America, I'm happy to say, because President Trump is standing strong, but in Europe, one country after another succumbing to them, condemning Israel, that is fighting these monsters and is doing its best to avoid civilian casualties, but basically giving a prize of a Palestinian state to these people who want to use it to destroy the one and only Jewish state. That is not merely the slumber of democracies, it's the weakness of democratic leaders who at a time of testing should stand up and show leadership. And leadership means standing up for the truth, standing up for your conviction, standing up for the right side of history and not for the wrong side that right now is completely populated with these mass killers.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's reaction right there in an interview with Sky News. But then we see that a synagogue in Melbourne built by Holocaust survivors in the 1960s was gutted in a December attack. Police say 3 people broke into the building and set it on fire. In Sydney, a kosher restaurant in Bondi was destroyed by fire in a separate incident, with 1 man arrested and later released on bail. About 90,000 Iranian burned people live in Australia. Now we see that figure. The expulsion of Iran's envoy marks a rare and forceful move in Australia's diplomacy, reflecting its determination to counter foreign interference and also to protect community security. Now, taking you over to the recent happening from the home front in this breaking report. Tensions erupted at the Molyko police station on Tuesday after residents accused officers of mishandling the national ID card application process. Applicants with confirmed appointments said they were turned away, while others without scheduled slots were reportedly processed immediately. One resident who had a 2:30 p.m. appointment said an officer announced at 1:30 p.m. that no further documents would be collected, effectively cancelling the day's appointment. Witnesses added that another applicant whose appointment was scheduled for the following week was processed on the spot. The incident has fueled anger among citizens, with many questioning the credibility of the national ID card system and the fairness of administrative procedures. The outrage has quickly shifted beyond local officers to the highest levels of government. Some residents directly blame Delegate General for National Security, Martin Barga Ngweli, while others pointed to President Paul Biya, accusing him of presiding over a culture of incompetence and negligence within the civil service. Now we see that Ambazonian activists say the Molyko incident is more than a bureaucratic failure. It is a symbol of the state's collapse under octogenarian Paul Biya's decades-long rule. The failure to respect something as basic as an appointment system shows the deeper rot in this regime, one activist said, arguing that such failures reinforce the push for self-determination in Ambazonia. For critics, the ID card debacle reflects a government that no longer commands public trust. They argue that when citizens cannot even rely on scheduled appointments for essential services, the state authority becomes increasingly irrelevant. The episode underscores mounting frustration over Biya's leadership, with many warning that repeated administrative failures risk further eroding the confidence in the government's institutions, as we have seen on a daily with Ambazonia. Now, moving over to Africa in Botswana. Botswana declared a public health emergency on Monday after hospitals and clinics across the country reported critical shortages of medicines and medical supplies. President Duma Boko said the military would oversee emergency distribution, with trucks scheduled to depart the capital, Gaborone, for rural areas later in the day. Let's take a listen.
Vested in me by Section 17, subsection 1 of the Constitution of this Republic, I hereby declare a state of public health emergency, granting me the necessary powers to make decisions quickly to address the immediate medical needs of the nation. In addition to this declaration, I hereby set aside Clause 34, Subclause 3, A and B of the Retirement Fund Act 2022 to enable the establishment of the Health First Botswana Partnership, a 5 billion Pula fund to which the Botswana Development Corporation shall invest the initial sum of 100 million.
The Health Ministry had warned earlier in August that supplies were running out because of financial challenges, forcing the postponement of all non-urgent surgeries. Medicines for hypertension, diabetes, cancer, tuberculosis, asthma, mental health, and reproductive health are among those in short supply, along with basic equipment such as dressing and sutures. The Finance Ministry has approved 250 million Pula, which is $17.35 million for emergency procurement. However, the Health Ministry reported debt of a billion Pula to private facilities and suppliers, which it said had compounded the crisis. We see that Botswana's budget has been strained by a prolonged slump in the global diamond market, its main source of revenue. Cuts in U.S. funding that previously supported the health sector have added to the pressure. Boko said inefficiencies in procurement and distribution had contributed to waste and loss of medical supplies. This is a critical situation right here, and humanity is at stake, if we may think about that. But then still on, in Africa, the South African government has issued a warning to young women about social media recruitment drives promoting jobs abroad after videos advertising opportunities in Russia gained traction online. Let's take a look at this video interview by Newsroom Africa.
For a while now, of young South Africans being targeted, in particular young women, being targeted by syndicates that are involved in what we can only call human trafficking. We've had to rescue a group from Myanmar recently. I'm sure you remember, about 23 of them. So the latest one that worried us, and that's why we issued a warning yesterday, was this group of influencers, social media influencers, that appear to have been mobilized to record promotional videos under the guise of opportunities in Russia in particular, again targeting young women. And the reason why we were worried and concerned about this is because we've had to rescue two South African young women from a similar arrangement in that particular country, who went there under the guise or promise of very good jobs in the hospitality and catering industry, promises of very good salaries, regular promotions, good accommodation, flights paid for, all of that looking very good on paper. Yeah. And yet when they arrived, the situation was completely different from what they were promised.
A structured overview, right? The authorities are investigating a now-deleted promotional video by influencer Siyan Boji, filmed in Tatarstan, Russia, which advertised a 2-year start program for women aged 18 to 22. The program promised accommodation, job placement, and language training. Boji, whose real name is Honor Zuma, has more than 1.7 million TikTok followers. While there is no evidence she has acted illegally, a promotion of the initiative drew sharp criticism. Officials say they are deeply concerned about influencers being used to lure young people into unverified foreign job schemes. South Africa's head of public diplomacy, Clesin Monyila, who you've just listened to, urged young people to be cautious and seek advice before accepting such offers. Concerns have grown following allegations that some recruits sent to Tatarstan ended up working in weapons factories, including drone production facilities linked to Russia's war in Ukraine. South Africa, where youth unemployment remains among the highest in the world. Now let's not talk about Nigeria and other places like Cameroon, has seen many young people drawn to promises of jobs abroad. Authorities say the latest cases highlight how online platforms are increasingly being exploited for risky recruitment schemes. Now, until next time, this is where I'll be drawing the curtain on today's Flash News. Remember, we'll be bringing you untold stories on Undaunted at the top of the hour, 8 p.m. Until then, do have a pleasant day and stay safe.